Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, founder and CEO at Riderflex. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast. And as a reminder, please subscribe to the Riderflex show for updates on new episodes. And by the way, if you haven't already, check out the book we recently launched, The Riderflex Guide, Inspiring and Hiring, available for purchase on Amazon. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand.
Robin, thank you so much for coming back on the Riderflex podcast, sir. Great interview the first time. I want to pick your brain more on some marketing stuff. But first, I got to tell you an update from my last conversation. Do you remember me telling you that my oldest son had recently called and said, Dad, you need to get these testosterone shots. Like, this is a big thing, right?
Yes.
but I hadn't done it yet when I talked to you.
Right.
I think I'm on week 6, maybe, or 7, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, I feel fucking great, man. I'm like, wow, I'm doing my push-ups, I'm doing my setups, I'm doing everything. I'm doing a treadmill, I'm walking the dog, I'm riding the bike, I feel good.
Amazing.
Relationships with the wife are good. Like, man, this is,
dude, I have so many questions. Is it a shot? Do you take a pill? Like, where do you get this? How do I get it?
I went to this men's clinic. In men's clinic, it's with like a doctor, whatever she is, I don't know. By the way, that was weird talking to a female doctor about guy stuff that was maybe a little uncomfortable, but she's asking me all kinds of questions.
It's growing. You're growing. And
I wasn't really there for bedroom issues. Well, a lot of guys, I guess, go for bedroom issues like that. I wasn't there for that. I was there because my son had told me about how just much better it would make me feel and for exercise and all this stuff, But anyway, went to the men's clinic and got it. And she said, now look, it's going to take about 4 weeks before you really start to feel something. And she was right. About the 4th or 5th week, I was like, wow, I actually do feel the difference. But anyway, so what they do is they give you your first shot there, or they take a blood sample and all that. And then they're like, okay, here's where your score is. And I was like at a 319, which is kind of low. Like 1,000 is super high. I was like a 319. And she goes, hey, we're going to get you to like an 800 or 900. I'm like, all right, cool. I don't really know what that means, but if that's close to the top, that's great. And so she gave me the first shot there, and then they mail the rest of it to you, like a little vial with the needles and everything. And then once a week, I just give myself a shot. Super easy.
Wow. That's crazy.
It's great,
really
man.
Crazy.
For any listeners, I highly recommend it. And by the way, for the whole year, for a year supply of it, it was like $1,500. Like not super expensive.
I mean, if you feel 10x better, I mean, it's worth all the money in the world. Take my money now.
I highly recommend it. Now, I just want to tell the listeners, I'm not a doctor, so consult with your doctor, whatever. And I'm sure there's downsides. I don't know. Google it. I'm sure there's something bad about it. I don't know what it is, but anyway, yeah, it's awesome. Just so you know.
Thanks for the tip. Okay, I love it. I'm going to look into it. For sure.
But you're already in great shape. I mean, your testosterone's probably high already, but you never know. I thought mine was high too. No, be interesting to get checked. Right? You should make sure you text me and be like, hey man, I scored whatever.
I mean, like I told you, the biggest thing for me is like just my sleep. And that's getting me. I actually just got a new bed yesterday, so I'm very excited. I slept on it for the first time yet last night. It was great. Much harder. My old bed was way too soft. And trying to get the bedroom all dark and like everything just has to kind of line up. A bed, I mean, it's a lot of money to spend on a bed, but at the same time, I mean, it's such an important investment. I mean, you spend 6 to 8 hours at least in bed, and and other things as well. And it's like it needs to be such a place where you just want to go. So and then the other thing for me, for my energy levels, has been a lot of like intermittent fasting. Definitely helps. And not eating. Actually, what I've tried since we spoke last time, I've been trying to cut out gluten and lactose,
Okay.
which has really helped. I mean, it's not perfect. It's not like I'm allergic to it. So having it obviously is not going to kill me. Like some people who are really allergic to it. For me, it's more, I can just feel like I feel more lethargic. Like,
Yeah.
as an example, I love a pizza. But my God, I mean, my day is like wrecked afterwards, You're like just so tired, And so not eating gluten and lactose has really helped, especially the lactose, I would say. I
Oh,
still eat a
really?
little bit
Okay.
of bread now and then. I just try to eat more gluten-free bread if
A
I can
little
find
bit.
it, but just minimal amounts, and that's really helped as well.
What are you doing for breakfast? I can't remember if I asked you that before. What's your
I don't do
normal
anything. I mean, that's the meal I skip,
fasting?
right? So
Okay.
I start usually eating between, my first meal is like between 12 and 1 usually. Like today was at 1:30 actually because I had some stuff going on. And then I usually try to eat within an 8-hour window or so. And
I
so
see.
roughly, yeah. I mean, again, I'm not like I would say I'm 90% strict on it. There are on occasion. It's usually social occasions are by far the hardest. If I'm out
No
with
doubt.
friends or family, or something's going on, I don't want to be that person who is just kind of like, it's just
Yeah.
awkward. Like if you're at breakfast, and everyone's eating and you're just sitting there drinking water, it just gets a little weird,
You're pulling out
So
your calorie
yeah,
measuring
yeah,
thing, and you're like, I
exactly. I don't
can't.
want
Sorry,
to.
guys. Like, nah, I can't.
I don't want to be. I mean, again, I'm not trying to be perfect or be a monk either. I want to love life and live life, but I'm just trying to like be healthy because I also know. I mean, I'm in my mid 40s. I want to be able to have energy for the next,
Yes.
many decades, and this is a big part of it. It's like staying in shape, working out, eating healthy, all those kinds of things. But I really want to look into this testosterone. I mean, you're not
Yeah.
the first one to say it. But I mean, I've read about it, but I've not known anybody who just kind of went and got the shots just like you.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's really made a difference. So I'd love to
I'm
see
a
what I
fan.
can do here in Denmark.
I'm a fan. You're so right about the social part. That's when you break the
Mhm.
rules, right?
Yeah, it always is.
The biggest one I've noticed on that when I'm hanging out with the guys, so to speak, is the beer because I've really cut back
Yes.
on beer. Like at home,
Mhm.
I'll drink red wine or whatever.
Mhm.
And I have like a case of Coors that's out there, probably going out of date. And
Yeah.
but if I meet the guys down at the tavern, they're all drinking beer. I'm not gonna like with 5 guys sitting around and they all got beers. I'm not gonna order red wine. I don't want to be
Totally.
that. I can't.
I always think of it this way, Steve, is if I was a monk, I'd have a perfect body. I'd sleep perfectly every night. I'm like, if I didn't have kids, if I didn't have a wife, I didn't have friends, right? Because then you could just control every variable in your
Sure,
life.
sure.
And I'm
Now
sure
your
some
wife,
people do. I'm sure some people do. It's just not my style. I don't
yeah,
want to be that. I mean, I also want to enjoy life, and I want to have a drink every
exactly,
now and then and some good
exactly,
food
exactly.
and whatever, right? So, but I mean, like I exercise every day pretty much, at least 30 to
That's
60
good.
minutes. So,
That's great.
but like if I ate better, I'd probably be like a perfect specimen. But
Your
again,
wife's a
this is
yoga
why
teacher or yoga
he
instructor,
is.
right? So she's
Yeah.
probably in
Hmm.
excellent shape too.
Hmm.
I'm guessing she's pretty solid. Yeah.
She is in great shape. She's in really great shape. And
You
I
guys,
also I don't take her yoga classes because they're too hard for me, honestly. And I'll tell you why. It's because she just teaches the hot yoga, and so it's like in a 105
ooh,
degree heated room. And I feel
ooh,
like every time I go in there, I'm about to pass out. But I do take her other class. She teaches a high intensity class that's an hour long. That's in a 90-degree heated room. Still hot, but I can at least like feel like I'm not gonna pass out. But it's super hard. It's a lot of like an hour full of starts very gentle, and then it goes into like hardcore mode of burpees and sit ups and squats and it's hard. You burn a lot of calories in that. I do that once or twice a week with her, so that's great. But I don't do her yoga. Probably should as I'm getting old. It's just like it's so hard. So here's what. Look, I ran my first marathon when I was 35,
nice.
and we'd been married for a while, and she was a yoga teacher, and I tried her classes every now and then, but she always kind of said to me, you're going too rarely, so of course you're never going to get into the rhythm of it. You need to like give it a go, right? For a
Yeah,
concerted period of time, and then you'll get used to the heat. Because if you come once every 6 months, of course you're not going to get used to the heat. It's going to make you feel
right.
like you're going to pass out. So I said, okay, I'm going to run my first marathon, and after that, I'm going to take a little bit break from running. I was 35 at the time, and as I said to my wife, I'm going to then do 2 weeks of nonstop hot yoga every day. Just like get it, 'cause I want to train my body. So I did it for 2 weeks, and I hated every moment.
Did
And
you are you a cold plunge guy? Have you tried that yet? Because that's pretty
yes,
popular
yes,
right now.
yes, I do. Again, my wife is way more hardcore. She does it a few times a week. Even during the winter, she did it here, which is cool. I would do
Really?
it during the last 6 months. I've probably done it maybe 2 or 3 times a month. I mean, I'm like in and out. She's like laying there,
Really?
swimming, and
That's fun.
I'm like in and out. It's so
Man, I don't
cold.
know if I could. I don't know if I could do it. Does she do?
Yeah.
I'm curious. Does she come out of the class where it's been super hot and then go in, or
No,
is that
it's
no?
completely separate. Yeah, completely separate. But a lot of times here in Denmark, I don't know how it is where you are, but the saunas have become such a big thing. These mobile saunas, so these mobile
Mm,
saunas
mm.
are everywhere. So a lot of people, they
Mm.
go dip and then you jump right into a sauna afterwards, and that I think makes it much more bearable. Coming out and standing there in the freezing cold and putting on your clothes, I mean, it's kind of miserable, honestly.
No doubt. Do you guys give each other a hard time about food, or like do you give each other shit about like
No.
if she no
No, no,
nah.
no, no. And she probably hate me saying this, but I convinced her to sign up for her first marathon. So now we're training together, which has actually
Oh,
been really fun. So
all right.
we're running together now. We just did 10 miles this weekend together because we were
Cool.
ramping up, right? We were running the Amsterdam Marathon in October together. So
All right. All right. Very,
it'll be
very
fun,
nice.
And I've
Very nice.
promised her that I'm gonna stick with her every part of the way. We're gonna train together. We're gonna do this, so it's gonna be a lot of fun.
My wife and I do give each other a little bit of crap, just I think for us, it actually kind of helps us because we're over 50. So it's harder. This morning I go up and I made my shake and everything. I'm doing my thing, and I go back upstairs and she's got she's got a, not a muffin, but some sort of bread in the little toaster thing. And it was 2 slices. I just looked at it, I was like, 2 slices, okay. And she's just like, fuck off. I can't remember what she said, but she's just like, but she jabs me too. Like if I go in and get like a second helping, like if I get up from the dining room table and like get a second helping, she's like, no. She's like, you don't need that. She's like, she'll say, just sit here for a minute. Just sit here for a minute. You don't need to get seconds. And that actually, that helps
true.
me.
It's true. But I got to say, you're living life on the danger zone. That is a very touchy subject.
Oh, I know.
In couples, I mean, I barely broach that, even though I think sometimes I eat too much meat, I think, and too much like carbs, and I think she eats too much sugar. But it was like one. You can only say so much.
You can only say certain things. You can only say certain things. The best line that I use with my relationship, and Kim and I've been together for I think 22 years now. The best line that just shuts it's like a what's the word I'm looking for, where it just disintegrates the whole thing. It just stops everything in its tracks. If we're about to like kind of debate something, or I can tell or whatever, if something's about to get too intense, if I just say, yes, dear.
Yeah.
It's like
good tip. It's a good tip.
It hits her like this bomb, and she just like, and you could just tell she's like, well, like
it's disarming. It's disarming.
It just disarms the word I'm looking for. Thank you.
Yeah.
It just disarms everything. It just totally shuts it down. And I use it so often now to where now she's actually like, she's just,
dude, she's gonna listen to this. She's gonna know all your tricks, man. You're just a little bit ahead of me. It's my 20th anniversary in August, actually. So yeah.
Okay. The big 20. All right.
Big 20.
Congratulations. And you're only marriage too. You're only marriage, right?
Yeah.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yep.
Good for you. Well, tell your wife I said hello. I'll have to have her on the podcast at some point. Maybe we talk about yoga.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, honestly, I totally understand the benefits, and everybody should probably do more of that kind of stuff. And so I try to do some stuff to get me more flexible and more, like, because especially I love running. Running is really hard as I get older on my core and my back. So I try to do 2 or 3 times a week other stuff so I can really like train that. Also, I don't want to be like a hunched over cripple at at 65. I want to be able to be active. I want to be like it's like Liam Neeson walking around kicking ass at like 70 years old.
Do they in Denmark, what's the status on stem cell and all of that? Like, what's the laws and rules? And our guy, like, does everybody do it there? Is it legal there yet? Like, what's the no? Oh,
Honestly, I wouldn't know. I haven't been following at all. So I wish I could give you an educated answer, but I don't know.
you know why you don't know is because you're not over 50 and in pain yet. If you were over 50 and in pain, you would probably have a full update.
But it's interesting here. I lived for for 20 years in the U.S. and there I think healthcare is much more proactive. It's a little shocking coming to Denmark. I mean, we have free healthcare and it's very good. I mean, it takes care of everyone, but it's not proactive. I mean, like I don't in the US I would get because I'd get healthcare insurance, get a yearly checkup, and then if they found anything they would like tell me, and here's what you need to do to like rectify that, so on. Yeah, no, they don't do anything unless like you go and ask, hey, can I get it, can you check, like, there's no communication from the doctor at all, which even the dentist, my dentist was very proactive, maybe also because it's more of a business in the US, right? They would contact me every 6 months. Hey, schedule your cleaning and your checkups and so on.
Yes.
Here, I had to go find one. I've been here 2.5 years now. I had to go find, a dentist.
Really?
Like, there's no outreach or anything. It's just kind of weird. Yeah.
Now that you have a really good handle on both, right? You've experienced both. If you had to force rank, if you were like this all-empowering God of the planet, and you had to either, let's say you had to put Denmark's healthcare system in place globally, or the US's healthcare system in place globally, and you were forced to choose, what would you do?
Oh, it's easy. I think the U.S. has a much more kind of advanced, proactive healthcare system, and they seem like they care more. At least, like when I would go to the doctor, they would at least show an interest. My doctor here, honestly, it seems like he could care less. He's just waiting for like it to turn 4 o'clock so he can go home. But basically, it's like that kind of vibe. Having said that, I'm a big believer that everyone should have access to healthcare. I think it's super important that nobody's get left behind or comes bankrupt because they can't afford to kind of get the treatments that they need, or die because they can't get the treatments they need. Now, so I think in that sense, I like it. I like this system a lot for that reason. I mean, how many people in the U.S. Either go bankrupt or end up like with really serious like sickness because they can't get the right treatment. I think that's super sad. So there needs to be something, I think, that levels that a little bit, but I think the system is way more advanced and friendly towards the patients in the US, if you ask me. I mean, here, if you get on a wait list for like a cancer treatment, you could wait probably like 6 months, a year, right? Depending, of course, how serious it is. And they are starting to become a little bit more Americanized, and there's some private health insurers now, which is basically the same doctor, same treatment, but it just gets you kind of bumped to the front of the line, that you're paying a little bit for, right? So I think they're trying to, they've learned, that there are some benefits to treating it a little bit more, I think, like somewhat of a business, but not completely. Like, it's still very much focused on everyone should have universal access. So it's interesting. I don't know. I mean, have you ever experienced it abroad anywhere?
I haven't, but I've interviewed a bunch of people that, like yourself, that live abroad. When I hear people say, we'll get off this healthcare thing, but that when I hear people, there's that law in the U.S. where if somebody goes to the emergency room, like, they have to treat them, right? I wouldn't call that universal health, but
no. Yeah.
It's, you know what I mean? It's kind of, they're going to treat you if you're about to die, but you're not going to, they're going to kick you out of the hospital as soon as they can if you don't have insurance type of deal, right? They're not going to do anything extra for you. So it could be better. I think your answer is right. I think the U.S. is better if you have to force rank them. Is it perfect? No. Could we do some other things different? Yeah, probably so.
Yeah,
probably so. I was going to ask you, your wife's yoga business, is she on social media? Does she advertise her service on social media? I'm curious.
No, I mean, so I'll tell you the story just really briefly, because it's interesting, and it's part of the reason why we're here now in Denmark, right? Is I mean, she basically became a co-owner of a studio in Silicon Valley, in Mountain View, and we were living nearby in Los Altos. And for like 5 years, she was working on building this up with the other co-owner. And I always kind of joke with her, you're like a startup CEO. I've spent my whole life in startups, right? And I can see the craziness that happens at a startup. You're doing everything when you come in early, you're building a company, like probably what you've been doing with your company, right? There's nothing that should be beneath you as the owner or the executive, right? The leader. it's anything from doing really glamorous stuff to be doing like she would be there, late at night fixing toilets that were broken or the washing machine's not working or dealing with irate customers or dealing with payroll. She had a staff of about 30, not full time, but so it's a decent studio. And it
That's a
was finally
business. Yeah, it's good size business. Yep.
it's kind of like, so finally getting to like a point of like being cash flow positive and getting quite successful. I mean, a lot of our clients came from Apple, Google, Facebook, because it was kind of in the heart of Silicon Valley.
Cool.
And after 5 years of hard work and like lots of hard work, then a pandemic comes and it shut down overnight. I mean, there's no way to keep a physical business, especially a hot yoga business, right? Because we tried when it first came, the pandemic. Like I was helping her set it up so she can stream, and do some Zoom classes. But one, it just wasn't the same, and two, like you have to have a hot room to do it, and so and it's a 90-minute class, and people's attention span on a 90-minute class, looking at a little screen, trying to do exercise, it didn't really work. So we really shut it. But it was tough. I mean, it's like shutting down a business that you worked so hard for is tough, But it also freed us up in some ways because it was always kind of one of the gating factors of us moving to Denmark is you can't just move a physical business. But once that was kind of out of the equation, it said, well, let's try it. And so now we're here, and we're at this point where my son has one more year in school. He's about to be a senior, and we're starting to look at colleges. Who knows? It might be the U.S., it might be England, it might be who knows, right? But he doesn't speak Danish, so it has to be an English-speaking college somewhere. But are we going to stay here forever? Who knows? But for now, it's good. Yeah.
The reason I ask about the social media is because you yourself, I mean, you do a really good job of your social media activity, your LinkedIn profile. You can tell it's, it's managed appropriately. There's effort behind it. There's reasons behind things. You do a great job of that. So I was wondering if she did the same. And I want to ask you some social media questions, advice for the listeners, if you don't mind.
Of course. No. But she doesn't really do it. No, I mean, she teaches here. She doesn't have her own studio. And I think if you asked her, she would say she never wants to have a studio again. That was a pretty rough experience. But she loves teaching and she loves the community. So she is definitely part of it. But no, I am very prolific. So go ahead, ask. If I can help with anything, let me know.
Here's a pretty broad one. Do you think social media, I know this is a gray answer. It's very hard to make this black and white, but in general, has social media been a positive or negative impact on society?
Wow, what a great, thoughtful question. Very deep. I think it's very hard because I have very mixed feelings about it. I think some platforms have been absolutely a terror on society in some ways. I think especially like Twitter feels to me like just like a cesspool of crap. Oftentimes, I still have an account. I go on every now. I try to post some inspiring stuff, but it's just like, I really don't like the anonymity of Twitter. And I understand there's some of the benefits. I don't have to go into the pros and cons. I just feel like, it can be such a mean place, and that's just not my vibe.
Meaner than Twitter. Meaner than Twitter. Twitter's pretty mean too.
No, that's what I'm saying. Twitter's mean, right? That's what I'm saying. Twitter's mean. And so it can be a pretty mean place. I think Facebook, I love some of the being able to keep in touch with people, but I rarely use it anymore. It's kind of really died down in my usage. Same Instagram, I use a decent amount. Obviously, I use LinkedIn a lot. We'll get to that in just a moment. So the question, has it been a positive or a negative?
Especially for young people.
Yeah. I think it really depends on when you came into it. I mean, I think if you were already a developed adult and you had a sense of self and a sense of what you wanted to do, I think it's probably been positive in order to stay in touch with people, find opportunities, find your tribe, and so on. I think it's been very challenging for young people because the way they feel like they get judged or the expectations of what they have to live up to. And it can be kind of a minefield if they say the wrong thing. I think some people don't know that it kind of sticks with you forever in some ways, or it can stick with you forever. So I think it's very challenging, and some people overshare, but I also feel like it's going the opposite direction a little bit. My son is 16, soon 17, and he's not on any social media. He doesn't want to be. He's like, I don't really care, right? And so it feels like there's like, I think like I could be wrong, but it feels like a lot of people in like their 20s and 30s, they're really like, they came up, with Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and so on. the next generation, I mean, they're certainly on, but they use more, I think, social media for like Discord and Snap, things that are like either very close communities or ephemeral. Like it's not stuff that sticks and stays forever. But very
Yeah.
few of those that really young generation put stuff up there that stay, because I think they're smart enough now to have learned from the previous generation, right? So and so it's really interesting. But
I
yes,
think
it's a great question. What do you think? I mean, I'm super interested.
I've asked that question a bunch to guests, and I've thought about it myself. I think usually my answer is like, if you forced me to choose, I feel like I guess I would go with it's been more negative than positive. Although there are positives, I just think the negatives outweigh the positives. However, the way you just broke it down, I think that sounds right to me. If you grew up before the social media and then it came into play, you have a better understanding of true reality, and you can kind of separate the two, right? But boy, if you're Gen Z or a late millennial, I feel like they're the ones most affected with the negative piece, right? Because they let it drive way too much of their thought process and how they feel about themselves and things. I was just at a recent event where there were some younger people, and several of them, there was like, "Oh, I'm just depressed," and then another one said, "Oh, yeah, I'm just, we're all depressed around here." And I was thinking, you're all depressed because you get on social media and you see these profiles where you think everybody has this perfect life and you don't have the life they have. So then you start beating yourself up, and that's why you're depressed. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. No, it's true. And there's like pressure, I think, to post a lot about how perfect everything is on certain platforms. This is also why I love LinkedIn. If we want to talk about that, it's because I feel there's power in people being it's their real identity, and it's tied to usually a company. So people are very mindful of what they say. They're very respectful of what they say. And of course, they're also mindful of who they work for. So they don't want to come across as kind of an asshole, right? So I think that's super powerful.
Agreed.
But I also think it's what's interesting if I look through the content I post and what gets a lot of response. So a lot of times I think when I talk authentically about my failures or insights or times I've kind of screwed up or learned things or something, because I think there's a hunger for like this exactly what I said, that it's not perfect. Life is messy, your career is messy, right? And everyone goes through it. This is one of the downsides, I think, of something like LinkedIn is, if you look at people's profiles, it doesn't actually reflect reality of what they've gone through. The profile always looks like everything goes up and to the right. Oh, you've got the great career, you've gone from this job to this job, and this, when actually the reality is your life is like this, and you get smacked in the face, and you get fired, or you get laid off, or something doesn't go right, and all kinds of things, right? That's very hard to like portray. So that's why I try to portray that a lot in the posts that I write about the failures that I've had. And it's not to like be a masochist or woe is me, it's because I've obviously come out of it fine, but those are also the moments that I can connect with people, and also give people the comfort. You know what? It's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. If you zoom out and take a long view on something like we talked about, nobody likes going through shit. I mean, I've been laid off. I've dealt with asshole. It's super tough. It's stressful, and it's not fun. In the moment, it's never fun. So I don't want to give that impression. When you look back though on it, this is when you're like, okay, this is when I grew the most, or I learned the most, or I got the most clarity about my life and what I want out of it. Like every time I've had some really hard bosses, I think, in my time. But every time when I look back, I was like, wow, it gave me clarity on the kind of people that gives me joy from working with, kind of projects I want to work with, the kind of culture I'm part of. So when for example, there was a time when I was interviewing at 4 different companies. I was interviewing at LinkedIn, and at Asana, and at Uber, and at Airbnb.
Wow.
And so four great brands, right? And I feel blessed that I have all these like great options. And I had this test where I would go in and I would show up early to an office, and I would just observe and watch how people interacted, because it's a culture, super important, right? It's much harder now, I think, with remote work and so on. So I remember coming into the Uber office, showing up like probably 20, 30 minutes early, as I saw people in the lobby and seeing how people are trying. Everyone seemed miserable there, frowny faces, lots of tension in the air. You can tell people are kind of arguing about stuff. Versus going to Airbnb or Asana, and people are high-fiving each other and smiling and laughter in the vibe. I'm like, you can't pay me enough to go work at like an Uber. So it's like, for some, I totally get your vibe, but for me, and this was before the scandal, and obviously
Yep.
they were going through some shit under Travis and so on. But
Yep.
I think the new CEO, it seems like he's really kind of fixed that around. But I'm like, for
Yep.
me,
That's important.
culture and the people around you is so important for me to unleash my potential and do my best work, you know?
You mentioned authenticity. I think people want to see that on social
Mhm.
media, especially LinkedIn, where you're right.
Mhm.
Everybody, most people post about all the awesome stuff. But if you'll,
Mhm.
my personal advice is to keep it authentic, be real,
Mhm.
share, be vulnerable to a certain degree.
Mhm.
And I think you'll get more attention on LinkedIn because people will feel that and they can relate to it.
Mhm.
You know,
For
I
sure.
think that's
For
important.
sure.
Do you think, what's your opinion on CEOs or any C-level executive posting on LinkedIn about political or social hot topics that are heavily debated or that could cause waves? What are your thoughts there?
I would not do it, and I would not recommend any CEOs do it. I don't see any upside in doing it. And the reason why, I think of it this way. Um, I think there's some sense that people need to be like robots, you know, like very corporate and so on. I don't think that's true either. I don't want you to show up and just say boring shit. That's not what I'm saying. But I think of it this way: show up on LinkedIn like you would show up in an office. So how do you show up in an office? Do you show up as a robot in an office and you have nothing to say about certain things? Of course you
Mm,
don't. You're a human being. You have
mm,
things that you care about. You're passionate about things, but you always do it in an office in an inclusive way that makes you connect with the people around you. You know, hey, you know, how was your weekend? Oh, you saw that game, or oh, wasn't that an awesome experience that you had, or whatever it has. It's always inclusive talk. It's never exclusive talk.
mm,
So if you start diving into some of these topics that are exclusive, that automatically
mm,
pitch you against something else, you wouldn't do that in
mm.
the office. You don't show up to the office like, oh, so how was your rally for, you know, Biden this weekend, right? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
knowing that I love Trump. It's like, you just wouldn't do that. It's just like you're instantly creating a hostile environment. So why would you do it on social media? So I always think of this way: show up like you would in the office. It's the best
Good
advice I
advice.
can give you. It's the
Great
best advice.
advice.
Like, you're a human being. People fall in love with you at work and want to work with you because you're fun to be around. You have opinions, you have high energy. That's how you should show up in social media, but inclusive. Be inclusive, not exclusive.
Totally
That's
agree. Great advice, Robin. How about this one? And this goes beyond LinkedIn, I guess social media in general. What are your thoughts on censorship or cancel culture? Um, yeah, can you give me some opinions or thoughts
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
on
mean,
what on maybe it's a two-part question on what has happened and
mhm.
what should be happening moving forward, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really challenging one. I mean, I'm certainly not an expert here, but here my feeling is sometimes there's a standard that people are trying to be held to that's impossible to upkeep. Like
Mm,
the best thing you can do, I think,
mm,
as a leader, and this is how I try to show up every day, is show up with courage and conviction and fight for my company, fight for my team, and try to do what's right. Uh, but as long as you don't hold me to a standard of perfection, because one, I think it's impossible to be perfect, and
yes.
two, that standard might be different for different people. Like, you know, as long as I show up and I do the right thing with good intentions, of course, then the outcomes themselves of that could be unfortunate and so on. But you can usually tell, I think, when people have good intentions or they're trying to, like, I think, do shit. But
Mm,
to the point of thing, cancel culture, I mean, sometimes I think there are probably people who need to be canceled, but I feel like honestly, it's gone way too far. Like there are people who, because they have a difference of opinion about the way you live your life or how you see the
yeah.
world, then it's like, oh, you should just be shut down. Like, well, you know what? Then don't listen to that person. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, like it's not gonna hurt you, right? You know, it's like, and my rule of thumb is pretty simple when it comes to this stuff. As long as you're not like harming people, and people should be able to be free to do and say what they want. But the moment it kind of crosses that line of you're harming people, and there's lots of different shades of that, of course,
Yeah.
then I think, yeah, it's not okay behavior, whatever that is. I mean, if you're like bullying people, that's not
Hmm.
okay. If you're trying to
Hmm.
physically intimidate people, that's not okay. If you're trying to like do like stuff that really harms people, no, it's never okay. Never in a million years, right? But you having a different opinion than somebody and being maybe be forceful about it, so what? You know, you're gonna deal with that throughout your entire life, right? It's
Right.
like grow
Totally.
up, you know, grow up, be an adult, learn how to deal with it, you know.
The some of the stuff that came out in the Twitter files that I saw, that made me a little bit nervous. I was like, damn, okay, that's
I
ooh,
didn't see
man.
it. Can you get what came out?
Yeah. So for the listeners, they can the best way to find it is to maybe follow Elon Musk on Twitter, and most of the Twitter files are either somewhere in his feed, or if you hashtag that, you'll see some of the stuff where there was, well, who knows if it's true? You never know what's true. That's the problem.
Yeah.
But what they put out was that there was the government heavily recommending that certain people were suppressed or canceled or whatever. And there's like email exchanges and messages, and I'm like, oh man, that kind of makes me nervous.
That sounds a little dicey to me too.
yeah. I'm in general, I feel like I'm a big First Amendment guy, so I'm pretty much I think free speech rules at the end of the day, and it gives the truth eventually comes out, even though there might be some ignorant people or dumb people or people you disagree with. I think if you suppress speech, it limits the ability for the real truth to surface. So yeah, as long as they're not,
I would agree. I would agree with that statement.
Harming people. Yeah, it makes me nervous. So I also think because the information on social media, the controller of information flow to human beings through the internet. Let's make it that broad. Let's make it that broad.
Yeah.
The controller of information to humans through the internet, like that is the most powerful weapon on the planet, more powerful than nuclear weapons, I think. And so I think we need to be very careful about who's controlling and who has power to shut certain things down or cancel people. We need to be careful.
Well, it's interesting you saw the whole Kanye West example, or Ye, right? As I think he's free to say whatever he wants, and the companies are free to do whatever they want, right? So it's like, they made a business decision. They're like, we don't want to be associated. So he's also an adult. He has to take responsibility for what he says and his actions, And if he decides to say those things and believe that he's an adult, he can do that, right? But if he gets canceled or gets not cancel his contracts or whatever, that's part of being an adult. You gotta.
If you own a business, and if you own a business that's tied to a certain social media platform, the fact that they can cancel you, I think sucks. However, you've chosen to drive your business through that platform. So if you want to drive your business to that platform, you might want to play nice in the sandbox, because if you don't, you might be kicked off the playground.
Exactly. Well, let me. So you were, you're going to ask about. I was going to tell you like 3 pieces of advice on LinkedIn, because I have finally gotten to a point where I feel like I have a pretty good system. But it took me a while to kind of like decode it.
Right.
So number 1 is I never post anything live to the feed. I always write it down first. I feel like it's way too stressful. I talk to a lot of executives, so many CEOs, to your point, they want to actually post and engage because they realize what a powerful community is and how great it is for their company brand and their personal brand. So they want to, but they're afraid to. And then I think it's such a daunting task to sit down in front of an empty box and suddenly you have to type in a brilliant thought. I'm like, it's never going to happen. Right? So I never post anything live. I have a notebook of ideas. I probably have 50 unposted ideas that I'm still working on. Right. So I have a catalog of it. Some of it, and most of my content is what I would classify as evergreen content. I see a lot of people there commenting on things that are happening in the news, or what Elon's doing, or Tesla, or Brian Chesky, or I mean, it's fine, but I try to post content that's can more stand the test of time, right? So I have a lot of evergreen content, and I work on it until it's interesting enough in my notebook. Does it have a point of view? Is it interesting enough? Is it something I will be proud to put out in the world? And if not, I either scrap it or I keep working on it until it's interesting enough. So that's the first tip, is like, just create a notebook. I have it on my phone, it's synced up to the cloud. So I have it on my phone, my laptop. A lot of times it's when I'm out walking or I'm
Oh,
running.
yeah.
I stop and I take like, oh, I just had this thought. And then I just write down, like, honestly, Steve, it's like sometimes just a sentence, like, oh, it's just a sentence in a notebook. And then I'll come back to it. But it gives me enough, like, a reminder when I come back and I have a little bit more time to work on it, see if it's something interesting. That's the first tip. Write it down,
Good.
because it takes the pressure out of doing something live. And then you can also focus on your tone of voice and your point of view, because the only way to get traction, the second thing is, there's so much content out there. There's so much noise. So unless you have something interesting to say or a different point of view or a pretty clear tone of voice around it, you're never going to break through. It's never going to get anything. And then you after like 6 months of posting, you're like, nobody cares. Yeah, because it's not interesting enough, right?
Right.
And so the only way your content's going to break through is by honing that, and then find your like areas of things that you really care about enough to I would say either become a subject matter expert, or maybe you already are one. So I post about leadership a lot, post about culture, post about marketing, and then I try to post about like life insights. Those are kind of like the 4 topics that I generally try to stay within, because I'm very passionate about it. I know a lot about those kinds of things. Rarely will I go beyond those. It's not because I can't. It's just like,
Yep.
I don't need this, just because I have an opinion about some shit doesn't mean I need to share my opinion. There's enough content out there, right? So that's the second thing, is like figuring out like what do you want to be known for? What do you want to be known for being an expert in? And then the third thing I realized around like LinkedIn especially, but maybe also the other tools, is as good as it is an external communication tool, it's an equally good internal communication tool. It took me a while to figure this out. If you're the CEO of a company or an executive, I can guarantee you that everybody on your team, or maybe if you're the CEO, everybody in your company is going to pay attention to what you post. And I started realizing this during the pandemic, is like, I would post, I started ramping up my posts to do more like one a day or maybe one every 2 days. And I would get notices from the engineers or the salespeople that never met, like, hey, what you posted really inspired me, or that was great. And so I also started using it to like post maybe inspirational messages or more things about how I think it saw the business, so because how often does it, if you're a company of, let's say, 1,000 people, how often do you get to go in front of the whole company and chat to them? Not very often, but LinkedIn or other social media platforms could easily be used for that. So it's an equally great internal communication tool. It's a way for you to like every day share something with them. If you're like, say, a sales leader, let's be honest, sales is very tough right now for most companies, right? They're not closing as much business, pipeline is tough. Sales reps are out there fighting, tooth and nail to close every deal. If I was a sales leader, I would be on there every day with something motivational to my team, and of course the world sees it. So it has to be something that's relevant for the world, but I can guarantee you your whole team is going to see it too.
I love all 3 of those. And let me just highlight the third one. I actually, when I post, I actually take the link to that LinkedIn post and then drop it in an email to the entire team to say, FYI, I did this post on LinkedIn today.
I love it. I love it. I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
It's a great hack. It's a great hack. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause it gets, I know they see it, and sometimes, they don't have to, it's their own social media, but sometimes they like it, or they share it, or they comment on it, which gives even more good marketing for the company.
Totally.
How about AI and Chat GPT as it relates to the content, that you put out? What are your thoughts, and have you used it?
I have tried it once, and I wasn't super impressed with it, but I'm sure it's going to get better and better.
Okay.
I mean, it's the way I see it today, and I think we're still in the early phases of AI, is that it's great for clarifying something, simplifying something, or giving you alternatives. Meaning, like, if you have a good headline, but it's not great, you can probably say to ChatGPT, come up with 5 alternatives with this headline. It'll probably come back with something great. It's a great use of, I think, ChatGPT. If you have written, like, let's say, a couple of paragraphs and you want to post it, but it's a little too kludgy or clunky, maybe you can tell ChatGPT, can you summarize this with 3 bullet points, or can you cut this down to one single paragraph, whatever. I think it's probably great for that. I haven't seen it be great at kind of original thought yet.
Agreed.
And so I feel like we're fairly far from there. What I've seen so far is pretty crappy or not accurate at all. And so I would never use it yet for that. That's not to say that it won't happen fairly quickly. It feels like there's a lot of innovation happening in AI, and I'm both, as you know, eternal optimist, so I think they can be really good, but it can also be. I'm also a little nervous about it. There's like
Totally.
how it can be used. I mean, I feel like there's already enough misinformation out there. I just worry about the amount of misinformation that's going to happen because of fake stuff, images, videos, fake voiceovers, fake
Yes.
content. And I was like, we really don't need more of that shit right now.
I
The world is
know.
already divided enough. Like I was trying to pull us together, and then now this
Uh,
thing comes along, and like, oh, this is a little challenge. Having said that, I think that that there could be a lot of like tedious things taken out of this, or
yeah. Yeah.
I think if we use it as I saw Sal Khan of Khan Academy talk about this in a TED talk. He did this last month
Okay.
about AI and learning, which I thought was a really great TED talk. And he talked about human plus AI like intelligence. So he calls it like human intelligence, but like the idea that you as a human is going to be infinitely better and have more time for the things that really matter because you have an AI assistant that's going to help you, I think is, I can totally plausible. I could totally see that happening. Like
Agreed.
take the tedium out
Agreed.
of some of these tasks
Yes.
or some of the
Yes.
stuff that I don't want to work on. Great. But leave you with more time to focus on the things that make you better and make you more successful. I think I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that future happen.
As long as that happens without Skynet and Judgment Day and
Yeah,
Terminator
exactly.
and yeah.
The Matrix, all that stuff. Yeah. No, it's interesting times in the world, man. I'm telling you, it's really interesting.
I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was like, "You remember those Terminator movies we watched, when we were kids, and all that stuff?" I was like, I was like, "Yeah," I was like, "Actually, that's kind of getting a little bit closer."
Yeah. I'll say, man, Terminator 2 Judgment Day is probably my favorite action movie of all time.
Is that right?
Gosh,
Yeah.
it's such a great action movie. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It just came out because I've always been a tech nerd, and just the use of both like computers in the future, AI, but also like the CG that it used was like insane. Like at that point in time.
I am normally against government intervention into business. Like the way I always think of it is, I don't want the government calling me to tell me how to run Riderflex.
No, for sure. Yeah.
But for AI and robot companies, man, I'm kind of with Elon on that, and some of the other people speaking out. Like, I think we need to be careful.
Yeah, I mean, when even the CEO of OpenAI says it, I mean, it's like, okay, I feel like we need some guardrails too.
Yeah, we need guardrails. Yeah, guardrails.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm very much for that, and it feels like I think the U.S. government, the European government, I think they're all trying to like work on some stuff. I think they need to accelerate it because there's such an arms race now. It's so ironic how life works. I think,
isn't it?
If you look at like OpenAI's mission statement, right? It's like to create AI. I can't know the exact words, but it's something like to create AI that benefits all humanity. And by them releasing ChatGPT, they started an arms race on AI. So it's like just, I mean, this is like directly opposed to kind of.
And the problem is, and not to get too, I'm not a conspiracy guy, but the problem is that arms race for AI will be worked on by bad people.
Of course.
Somewhere. Yes. I mean, so we're in that phase. So it's going to be an interesting place for my granddaughters to grow up. I was telling my wife the other day, I have 2 granddaughters, and we went to see them this last week. And I said, I don't know where all this AI and robot stuff's going, but by the time it gets super advanced, I'm going to be either dead or I'm not going to care. And I said, but my granddaughter was sitting there, Rose, and I said, but Rose is going to have to deal with it. They're going to have to deal with it. I don't.
Yeah. But it comes back to the conversation we had earlier. I mean, like most technology is neutral and can be used for good or bad depending on who's wielding it.
True.
Social media is the same, right? I think
that's true.
I bet that when Twitter and Facebook and Instagram all started out, all of them had the best intentions.
Sure, I agree.
Of course they did.
Of course they did.
They couldn't have envisioned that 20 years later they were fucking up society. Are you kidding me? Or fucking up teenagers? No way.
Totally agree.
I don't buy that at all. They all had good intentions, right? So the fact that it's been used for ill, that just shows like
it's
up
human
to
nature.
Us. It's up to us.
Somebody's going to do it. You could say the same thing about guns, right? The first inventor of guns probably was thinking this would be a great way to kill some deer so we can have food. I'm sure the inventor of the first gun didn't go, let's make this so we can just kill people. I doubt it. Like every single thing we make as a society, the problem is somebody bad is going to get a hold of it. I wanted to go back to ChatGPT. What
Mm,
you described is exactly what I use it for. I will be like, if we have let's say there's a job spec that a client sent us and they have it a certain way, I'll play with it a little bit and then I'll toss it into ChatGPT and get a couple of options from it. And usually it'll spit out, a couple of other options, or maybe it'll give me something unique. I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. That's a good one. Or like you said, hey, make this one paragraph instead of two, put this in bullet point form. That kind of stuff it's great for. Yeah. But just original content, no, I haven't used it for that. I have not said, I haven't used it to do anything to just produce the whole thing originally. My
No,
stuff
I haven't either.
is I'm pasting stuff in and asking it to do something with it, usually.
Yeah. Yeah. To say it's the same. I tried an interesting experiment. I was traveling to Ireland last month, I think it was, and I asked ChatGPT, "Can you create an itinerary that puts me in these places because I want to see these sites? That starts at this time. I want to have lunch here. I want to go see these sites, and I don't want to go here." And it came back with like an awesome itinerary. It's like,
really,
it was amazing. So for like travel planning, wow, I was really impressed, I gotta say.
okay.
So there's still that, like, that's like great, but that information is all out there. That's why it's like it's perfect use case, because it's beforehand I would have to go read probably 10 blogs around like what to do when I'm in Dublin for 2 days or something. Right?
Exactly.
And now it's just kind of like
Right,
summarizes it
right.
for you. It's like awesome,
Yeah, very good. I know we're almost out of time. A couple of just really fast. I'll wrap it up here. I know you're probably bumping up. So with AI, this kind of rolls into AI. I know that you generally are not I would call you're not in favor of 100% remote most of the time. Like, I think you're like hybrid maybe is okay, but is that accurate?
I would say it's go ahead.
Well, do you think remote's going to get, going to increase with the advancement of technology? Do you think it will increase more? And I am fascinated by how the commercial real estate moguls that are having a bunch of empty office space around the country are trying to navigate people back there because they're losing money.
Yeah.
Kind of a two-part question there. Yeah. What are your thoughts there real quick?
Well, it's a lot to unpack. Let me try to be as succinct as possible. I think we all went remote overnight because we had no other choice, right? Yeah. It's not like we woke up one day and like, this is the best way to work. So we did it. And I think we were quite successful, honestly, in doing it. People were still productive. Companies were more efficient than ever, but there was also a little bit of inflation because like everyone just sitting in front of a screen all day long, right? There was nothing else to do during a pandemic. So people just worked harder. I think a lot of people honestly also burned out because of it. And then the world started opening up again, and we were starting focusing more on hybrid work. Everyone can kind of choose their own adventure, and some people can come in. We're still going to maybe have some offices somewhere, but we're going to shut down a lot of them and so on. And honestly, for the longest time, I was a huge fan of hybrids. Like, it sounds great. Everyone wins. It's the best of both worlds. People want to come into an office can do that. People who want to work from home or remote could do that, so on. Great. I still think now, 3 years later into this kind of weird experiment that we're in, is that I still think hybrid can work, but I think it's the hardest one to make work. I think the companies who are saying we're an in-office first culture, of course you're an adult. If you need some flexibility to work from home once or twice a week, that's fine. But we're predominantly in office. I totally get why they're doing that. They feel like they're getting maybe more cohesion, community, more camaraderie out of it. I've spoken to a ton of CEOs, honestly, in the last couple of years, and so many of them, they would never say this publicly because they would probably get flayed because there's such a movement about how great remote work is. But so many of them are like, I don't like remote work. I feel like I'm losing like the culture of why I created this company. I want to be here with a team. I want to work together and hard stuff and like we be a missionary, with that. And then that's hard to feel when everybody's kind of just remotely. The energy is just this hard to replicate. So I think in office can work really well, or 100% remote, I think can also work super well because it kind of evens the playing field. Then you can truly hire people from anywhere. You just have to kind of set up the company and the processes and the way you communicate and so on. A lot more maybe async work and so on, but it evens the playing field. The hybrid work is really tough if you have like a couple of people in an office and some remote. And it's just like, again, I think you can do it. Honestly, Steve, I think you have to be super intentional about the guidelines and how it's going to work and who benefits. there are also, so that's one layer of it. The other is, of course, just what kind of human you are. When I think about what gives me energy and the kind of job that I do, marketing, so it's a very creative, job. I'd like to think. I'm an extrovert, so the idea of me sitting remote 100% of the time just sucks for me. Versus others, they love it. They love the freedom of it. They can kind of pick and choose. If you're an engineer, a lot of times, not to stereotype, but they seem to be the ones who are most in favor of staying remote.
Right.
And like some certain job types, right? So I think a lot of it depends. What I've come to the conclusion for me is I don't need to see people every day, but I also think if you were to tell me that for the next 20 years of your life, you're just going to sit and stare at a screen by yourself, sounds awful to me. Just
Ooh,
awful.
wow. I hadn't thought about
I mean,
looking at it yeah.
But I was at Matterport, not even just about 2 years, right? And very proud of the work we did. We grew the company successfully. We took them public. But in the 2 years I was there, I never once met my team. And of course, it was also because of the COVID and so on. But I really miss that human connection because there's some things that are just really hard to do, I think, remotely or when you're doing it through virtual screens. I think a one-on-one, totally fine. If it's a status update, totally fine. Even all hands can be okay, but they can be a little bit, I think, energy draining sometimes.
Yeah.
And some meetings can be great because you can kind of get input from people if it's like more like structured. Remote is awful for when you're trying to like do creative brainstorming or solve tough problems or have tough conversations. Remote is just hard, really hard, I think.
Yeah. Great insight, Robin. The only thing I would add from my own personal experience is you're right about on the hybrid piece. The one thing I noticed was, let's just use meetings. We'll go down that far, kind of granular, and say for meetings, if you have 6 people around a conference table and 2 people are always on the screen, the 2 people on the screen will always be left out of certain things.
100%.
The meeting before the meeting after meeting, the chatter and the things that happen before and kind of after they hang up, the vibe of the room, the facial expressions that they may not be seeing. They're always kind of on the outs a little bit. They're not part of the inner circle club.
I'll tell you, I have experience with this firsthand. So I joined WeWork in 2018, and I was based in the San Francisco office, and my plan was to go to New York because headquarters were in New York, probably once a month or so. But I quickly realized in my first month, me trying to be effective when I have 10 aggressive Israelis in a room yelling at each other, whiteboarding, couldn't hear half of the time. I can't see what they're writing. Can't read body language. So I ended up like, shit, man, I gotta be there. So I ended up going pretty much every week because I needed to be there to be effective. I think to your point exactly, if this is why I think 100% remote can work, because then everyone, it evens the playing field in many ways. I think it totally works. Or if you're mostly in the office, this weird hybrid, it's super, I think, unfair in some ways for the way that you actually get to include everyone. And so you end up, I think, excluding a lot of people from those conversations. It was virtually impossible for me to participate in these conversations when I was the only one sitting on a screen with, this kind of vibe. So
Totally agree. Great insight, my friend. Robin, you're such a great guest, man. You give really great advice. You're very insightful, tons of experience to share with the listeners. Hopefully a lot of people picked up on some good things, took some notes. I know you got some things coming up, my friend. I know you got some stuff coming up personally. I do. I wish you the best and everything. And once you get into something different, and you build your next company and take it public, you'll have to come back to the show. I appreciate having you. I would love to.
We got to continue part 3, so let's do it. Steve, I love chatting with you because it just feels like such a great natural conversation. And thanks for inviting me in again. I really appreciate it.